Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate the Hate podcast. I am Wilk from wilksworld.com. This is going to be episode 56, and this one's going to be called Sparking Change to Better the World. And you'll know exactly why after listening to this week's interview with Rick Ornelas, whose inspiring story, 20 years in the making, has been doing great things in the realm of bettering the world by helping people. Now, at the Derate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world, one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. What have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? Now, Rick Ornelas is somebody who's day in and day out doing wonderful things to make the world a better place. Rick's incredible and inspirational story started a couple decades ago with a near-death experience. His awakening came in the form of a divine inspiration and awe-inspiring spiritual connection when he least expected it. He went from isolated and hopeless to writing a best-selling book in under 3 months while envisioning and creating an incredible future. This fulfilled the dream that he had been ignoring for years, to build a community of amazing souls to spread positivity, hope, and love while creating a ripple effect throughout the world. Rick is an author, a speaker, and professional coach who teaches men and women to unlock their amazing potential to create an incredible future and change the world around them. Rick is the author of 12 Hours of Heaven, Lessons for a Better World, and he's also the founder of iSpark Change, a global movement and online community of those who seek to make the world a better place, one act at a time. Rick has been featured in multiple media outlets, including national and international television and radio. He's a regular writer for Lifehack and a guest contributor for various different websites. With that, let's jump right into the interview. All right, Rick Ornelas, thank you for joining me on the Derate the Hate podcast. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Hi, good afternoon, Wilk. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. So when I was looking at your profile, I saw the positive change expert, and I looked about a little bit into your background and the things that you were doing. And as you know, the Derate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. And then I saw your tagline, bettering the world one act at a time. And I saw so much compatibility in what we're doing and the message that we're trying to spread out there. And I was totally impressed. And I said, we definitely got to get Rick on the show. So I can't tell you again how much I appreciate your time. Now, when you talk about being a positive change expert, and that kind of manifested itself from a near-death experience, is that correct? How did that come to play?
Yeah, so I'll tell you kind of in reverse. So the positive change expert, that was something that it was one of the first podcasts I was on, actually. And the host, he dubbed me a positive change expert. He gave me that name and said, you should be called a positive change expert because that's really what you're doing and what you're all about. And so I said, you know what, I really like that. I'm gonna stick with that. And others have said similar things. So that's why I said, okay, this is something I should leave on there. But where to go back to the near-death experience where that story begins was 20 years ago, where my wife and I were living in California at the time, which is where we're both from originally. And we had we have 3 daughters, but back then we had 2 of them were born, and they were very small. They were 1 and 4 at the time. And we were driving back from a birthday party. We had driven down to Los Angeles to go to a birthday party, and we were coming back, and it was kind of late in the day. And it started to rain really hard, where the wipers can't clear the water kind of rain, where it's first rain in a long time, where it starts to rain and the road's really slick because it hadn't rained in a long time. First we contemplated stopping because we saw a lot of cars were pulling off the road, but it was getting late, and my wife, didn't want to be driving in the dark because she felt it's going to be way worse if we waited until tried to wait it out, and then all of a sudden it was nighttime. So we decided to continue on really slow. Well, as we cruised along in the slow lane, I hit a big puddle of water, and we started hydroplaning, and I lost complete control, and we spun from the slow lane all the way across 4 lanes, nearly hit the center divider, And then I'm trying to steer, and we're both screaming, and then somehow we start spinning the opposite direction, and we spin across the 4 lanes back the other way. And then we go off the freeway on the shoulder up this dirt embankment, and we hit a cinder block wall, and the car flips over and we land back on the wheels. And as we're sitting there, and my daughters have been asleep, thankfully, and they had woken up and they're crying, and I'm checking if everyone's okay, and my wife says she's okay, but the roof of the car is smushed down, down to about here.
Oh, geez.
And the windshield is shattered, and the right side is all smashed, and her window's broken, and the car's filled with dirt. And I think we scooped dirt when we hit the embankment or something. We scooped this bunch of dirt. It was really weird. And we're all unharmed. I mean, it's not a scratch. She was a little sore on the right side from the impact, but I mean, she didn't really have a bruise or anything. And we get out of the car, and we're sitting on the side of the road in the rain. And this elderly couple had pulled over, and they popped out, and the lady brought a blanket and wrapped it around my wife, and she's sitting there holding my daughters and just crying and thanking God. And I'm talking to the gentleman, and he says, I can't believe that you all got out of the car. I thought for sure that they had called 911. They thought for sure that we were either severely injured or dead. And we had the kids checked out. I mean, everything just not a scratch, everything completely unharmed. And I really felt like it was a miracle. And then it was even confirmed the next day, because the car was undrivable. It got towed away, and we got picked up from the hospital by my sister, and go back home, and we have to drive back down the next day to get our things, because we had been traveling so hard. The trunk was filled with stuff, and as I arrive at the tow truck yard, the car was sitting on a flatbed right outside, right in the front. It was still sitting there, just all smashed on this flatbed truck. And I go inside to the office, and I say, hey, I need to get my things out of the car. And he's like, what car? And I'm like, the one that's on the flatbed, the black Grand Prix. And he's like, that's not your car. And I said, yeah, that's my car. Here's my ID. That's my car. And he says, no, that can't be your car, because whoever was driving that, for sure they'd be dead or in the hospital. And he proceeds to tell me, he's like, I can always tell what happened to the person by looking at the car. And I was like, well, I'm telling you, it's my car, and I finally convinced him it was my car. And, that really made me think, like, hey, this is kind of a big deal, that we survived this, that, like unscratched, that, and that's really the beginning, the story, which, fast forwards to last year and everything, but it all started, like the true reflection on my life and true re-examining things and realizing, I need to live better. I need to be better, closer to my family. I need to treat others better.
There's nothing really like a near-death experience to really start to put things into perspective. And that's certainly one of them, to see, to be involved in something like that, and to, to look at your wife and to look at your children after the fact, and just the amazement of, what could have been versus what is, and being able to put things into perspective. So let's take that journey up to modern day. You said that after the onset of the pandemic and the lockdown and all the pain and things that were associated with that, you talked about a certain divine inspiration that came over you to start this journey with your iSpark Change community. And walk me through that divine inspiration, at the onset of the pandemic, and where that has brought you up to modern day.
Yeah, and thank you for asking about that, because that's really, the story, it started 20 years ago, but that's really where that's almost like if it was a movie, that's a flashback. It really starts, last year, where when the pandemic had started and everything had shut down, and we're quarantined and isolated, and I started to go in like a fearful and anxious place, like a lot of people, right? There's a lot of uncertainty with what was happening in the pandemic, and that wasn't a very comfortable place for me, because that's not the type of person that I am. I'm a very positive person, and I try to always look for the bright side of things and everything. And so I started to go in that place, and I quickly realized I can't go there. It's not a comfortable place. It's not a safe place. It's not a healthy place for me, for my family, for anything like that. I decided to write. And so I wrote a blog article that was titled How to Use COVID as an Opportunity, and an opportunity to grow and to better oneself and to be grateful and to be humble and to help others. And it reminded me of something I had written immediately after the accident. So right after the accident, I wrote I typed out this little list for myself, and I called it a to-do list for every day. And on this list, it was things that I wanted to live by. So it was doing unto others. It was treating others with kindness and respect. It was loving others and serving them, and being grateful and being humble, and living like it's the last day, of your life, and any day, because, cherishing every second. And it reminded me of that. And I actually still have the little paper that I printed out, and I kept it on my desk, and I still have it. And I pulled that out and I read through that. And then I said, I really need to start writing the book that's been in my head since after the accident. Because after the accident, as I was reflecting and I had written that to-do list, one day I'm sitting in my car, and my mother had given me a little guardian angel pin to put in the visor of my car after the accident, because she said, your guardian angel protected you. So, I'm going to give you this little pin. And so one day I'm sitting in my car and I'm staring up at that pin, and I'm thinking about that list. I kept it there, and I'm thinking about that. And all of a sudden this story came into my head like a movie, like I had just watched a movie. It was very clear about an angel that, coming down and helping people on earth. And that story had been in my head for 20 years. And so last year, after I said I need to use this time as an opportunity, I said I need to write this book. People are struggling. I need to try to inspire others. I need to inspire myself. I need to write it to help me get through this, and hopefully it helps others. And during the time of writing, that's where that period of that spiritual connectedness and that divine inspiration came. Because when I started going through the writing process, just very methodical, like, okay, how do you write a book? You look up and it says you write 500, words, 1,000 words a day. So I start typing, okay, I'm going to write 500,000 words a day, and start typing. And then as I got into it, and, I'm like a month and a half or 2 months in, all of a sudden I start getting really spiritually connected. And I'm writing, about an angel. And so I like the story just starts flowing out of me, and I start feeling, the presence of God, like right there with me, like I had never felt in my life, where I just felt it so strongly, like he's there, the Holy Spirit, just so strong. And I would wake up in the middle of the night with dreams and visions and this flood of ideas. And during that time, which lasted about a month or 5 weeks or so, the writing flourished so much so that I finished the book. I went from being about halfway done to completely finishing in like just 1 month more. And wow. And then but more importantly, I had all these ideas, and I felt this calling to do more than just write that. And that's where the idea for I Spark Change came about. And that's where I felt the calling to create this community and movement, and to start doing more work to spread positivity and change around the world. Not just write a book and be done, but to make that a focus, going forward for my life.
So that 12 hour in the book, if I'm not mistaken, is the 12 Hours of Heaven Lessons for a Better World?
Correct. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that book came out when?
It came out in October. It came out in October of last year. Yeah. The quick, interesting little side story about that is, so I finished writing the book at the end of July, and I need to get this out. I wanted to release it immediately. I'm like, how do I get this out as soon as possible? I spoke to a friend, referred me to this publishing consultant who has a publishing company, and she said, what, if I find you a publisher, this could take a year or 18 months, or 2 years before it comes out. And I was like, there's no way I can wait that long. Like, I want to inspire people now. And, my message, I want it out there. And so she said, hey, if you really commit and you really work really hard and I can guide you through the steps, then you can get it, out there in just a couple, few months. And so we did that, and it came out in the middle of October. She's like, you got it. I was thinking November, December. She's like, nope, you got to get it out before elections, holidays, all that stuff. She's like, October. And I was like, okay. And it was a ton of work, but managed to get it done, and it launched, and and it's been received really well, and I got it out quickly, like I felt I was being called to do.
That's incredible.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the reviews are awesome on Amazon and Goodreads, and more importantly than that, because that's just a tangential thing, right? You see some reviews or whatever, but more importantly than that, it's just the stories that people have shared with me, is that it's given them inspiration, which I always wanted it to, and hope that had it done that, would do that, but then also that it's inspired change in people. Like I have someone that told me, hey, since I read that, because one of the lessons is, for example, practice gratitude. And this individual, he says, hey, since I finished reading your book, I've been practicing gratitude, every day for the past 3 or 4 months. And I was like, that's awesome. And his outlook has changed, and it's having a positive impact on his life. And the lessons are they're not like earth-shattering lessons. They're things that you can read. They've been practiced for thousands of years, right? You can find them all in scripture or sources. But the fact that that it is having the impact that people are taking things like that, like the gratitude, and putting them to use, that tells me that I did the right thing by getting it out there.
Oh, I think you definitely have, and that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about, was the lessons in that book, and I know you talk a lot about gratitude, as I do, on the Derate the Hate podcast. In fact, episode 53, I challenge people to do an attitude of gratitude and personal accountability challenge. I think that's two of the biggest things that anybody can do to have a better and happier life. We talk about what have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? And that practicing gratitude, an attitude of gratitude every day, and not only practicing it, to say it mentally and to say it to yourself, oh, I'm thankful for this, is one thing. But I know you talk about journaling and keeping a journal of the things that you're grateful for. And then like I said, I talk about also personal accountability. What happened to me today that I had no control over it, but I do have control over what could I have done differently personally to change, not necessarily the outcome of the event, but change how I felt about it and how I came away from it. So I think, again, so much of what you and I talk about are very much on the same level. So talk to me about iSpark Change, your community, your organization, iSpark Change. What is that, and how is that helping people as well?
Well, iSpark Change, it's a very simple community, a group. We have the website iSpark Change, where people can join iSpark Change. We have Facebook group on social media, the same thing as iSpark Change. But what it is it's just a safe place to empower individuals to spread positive change in their world, in their world, in their actions, in everything they do, just one act at a time. Because what I found is that there's a lot of us, and I've been there myself in the past, that we want to change things, right? We want things to get better, but either we don't know how, or we feel that we're just one person, and what can we do? We're just too small. How can I change, this whole great big world with just one little individual? And, so I commend people like you that actually, take action and try to spread that. And what the community is, it's all about, it's that safe place to show people, look, you're not alone. You can just by smiling at someone, just by bringing in your neighbor's trash cans, just by, putting back the grocery cart for someone, or letting someone go in front of you in a line of cars. I mean, just any little action like that, those all can have a ripple effect that makes changes that you may never see, that people that we may never know, or you may never see. But the fact that you do it has a positive impact on yourself, and then it will have a positive impact on the person that is the receiver, the recipient of, of those actions. And with iSpark Change, we, daily on social media, we share inspiration, we share motivation, we share tips on how to, spread positive change or practice gratitude or do different things like that to help spark change in the community. But it's just to show people that the biggest thing about it is it's to show people that they're not alone, and that there is some hope that they can change.
That actually it's so true that those little acts of kindness, those little acts, those little things that we can look for, how big of a difference that actually makes, not only for the individual, but that snowball effect that you talked about, whether you're right, just a small thing like putting the cart back for somebody at the grocery store, or holding the door for somebody, or one of my biggest complaints about this whole mask thing with the lockdown. I talked in episode way back in episode 4 of the Derate the Hate podcast. I talked about smiles and bad moods being contagious, right? Sometimes it's just that smile that somebody needs to see. You catch a passing smile from a stranger, and how much that that works for people. Or you talk about children. You and I are both fathers, and that your child being able to see that smile on your face, and how important that is, the facial features and those little things, how important that is for a child's development.
Yeah,
so important. And then it actually, as you and I are talking this conversation, and I love this conversation, it just reminded me of something. It might be a little off topic, but it reminded me of, I heard a story of a guy. He started with a paperclip, right? He started with a paperclip, and he traded the paperclip for something else small and meaningless, because he found one person that wanted a paperclip, so he traded it for something else. And then he found somebody else that wanted something else. So this guy kept on trading up from something so small as a paperclip, and he kept on trading it to trading whatever he had traded, and just bartering back and forth with people for these little things that kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, until finally his last thing he traded for was a house. Okay. So I know it's an unrelated story, but if you think about the concept of how something so small can start and turn into something so big, it really it's an inspiration. So those small things that we're grateful for today, or there's small things that we pass forward to somebody else today or tomorrow, can turn into that snowball effect and turn into something much bigger than it ever originated as. I'm also reminded of an organization called the Mustard Seed Foundation in Florida. I lived in Florida for several years, and the mustard seed is one of the smallest things on the planet, but it turns into this big, amazing plant that whatever. It's a very cool thing, so yeah, for those people who think that their small action doesn't make a difference, well, that's not the case, because some of the smallest things can turn into some of the most, the biggest and beautiful things. So, which leads me right into how can we each make a difference each day? What are your top couple things that each of us can do as individuals each day to make our lives a better life and make the world a better place, rather?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Wilk, and thank you for answering it. And the first one to say will relate to the story you just shared about the paperclip, because I think that's an excellent analogy, because so often people don't do something for another because they think of it in relation to themselves. So, for example, if that individual had thought, oh, well, I don't need a paperclip, I'll just throw it away. What am I going to do with this paperclip? But that paperclip had value to someone else. So he found someone else that it had value for and was able to trade to that individual, right? So someone may say, oh, I'm not going to smile at that person because I don't know them, or, they have a mask and, I'm not going to do it. I don't know what effect. But you never know what the effect will be on that person. And so the first tip would be to not think of those actions in terms of yourself, or the value to yourself, like, oh, when people smile at me, it doesn't really do much for me, I don't really care or whatever, but to think of it in terms of the potential value for that other individual. So I heard a story from a friend who shared that, I don't think this is disclosing anything in confidence, but she's a therapist, and she was, so without saying her name, she's a therapist that was with one of her clients in session, right? And this person was not in a very good place, and she shared the story, and that's why I use this analogy. She shared the story of someone that had smiled at her on a day where she was having one of her worst possible and most anxious and depressed days, and was at a very, very low point, and that smile was just that little bit that carried her through the whole rest of the day. Just without that, she didn't know what she was going to do, but just that little smile. And if that person had only valued it as, oh, it's just a smile, what good is it going to do for that person? Then that other individual would have never benefited from. So the first one is, just in summary, to put it out there, just take action and put it out there, whatever it is, the smile, holding the door, letting the car, whatever it is, and let the snowball, let the ripple effect, go from there. That would be number one. And number two, I would say would go back to what you're talking about with the gratitude, but it's looking at everything as an opportunity. So, when COVID hit, initially I started to, get down, get anxious, go in that fearful place. And then I said, what do I have now that I haven't had before? I have time. I have a bunch of time that, I've been putting off this book for years because I keep saying, you don't have the time, you don't have the time, you don't have the time to write. Well, now all of a sudden I'm stuck at home like everybody else for, hours on end. I could either, sit there and binge watch a bunch of TV shows, or I could use it as an opportunity to do something I had wanted to do for 20 years. And that's where I said, okay, I'm going to seize the moment and use it as an opportunity. So I would say to look at a tactic called positive reframing, but to take anything in your life, you may look at it as, quote unquote, bad, or society may say, oh, that's a bad occurrence. You got in a car accident. But, maybe out of that car accident, you are able to get the car of your dreams, that you've always wanted, or you're able to, use the insurance money to improve your situation, or, whatever it is, right? And so to take anything and just look at the opportunity that it provides, rather than just the incident in itself. The third tactic is, which goes right in line with the first one, is to practice that gratitude. That in itself will have a remarkable impact on the first two. If you do the gratitude, it'll have a remarkable impact on the first two, because it completely changes your mindset. Like you were saying earlier, you have that attitude of gratitude. I like to do it first thing in the morning and end my day with it. So first thing in the morning, I'll journal something. I read some gratitude, and I'll journal something that I'm grateful for. And at the end of the day, same thing, I read some more gratitude. And I just use an app. I just use a gratitude app on my phone to make it easy. Anyone can do that. Mm-hmm. And then I'll journal in there where I'll put, something that I'm grateful for. Maybe it's something from the day, maybe it's something that just comes to mind. But what you'll find is, maybe at first you're like, oh, what am I really grateful for? But then, at first I started doing it once a day. Now I do it twice a day. And sometimes I'll write things in there just randomly because I'm like, I got to write that in there. When you start reprogramming your brain, to look for the things to be grateful for, it has a tremendous impact.
It's funny we talk about that because back in episode 52, and it's funny because each one of these things that we're talking about just plays so much into what I talked about before. But episode 52, a few weeks back, I talked about the reticular activating system and how and how it works both for good and for bad. But if you're using it for good, each day that you look for those things to be grateful for, soon you find yourself in a pattern where your brain starts to focus upon and find those things to be grateful for. And the same way would work and the converse of that, if all you're always focused on is bad things, you're that's what you're going to see. That's your life manifests itself in a negative way because that's the first thing your brain is looking for. So no, I love that you make such an important point. And like you said, you start in the morning and you just, what am I grateful for this morning? And then pretty soon, you just, as you continuously do that, make that a habit, you start to find more things throughout the day and every day to be grateful for. And it just, gratitude is the key to happiness. You can't be a happy person without being a grateful person.
I'll add one bonus thing. You just think of it when you were sharing that. First off, I love how you can remember the episodes. You're like, 52 or number 4 or whatever. You can do that. But to go along with that gratitude first thing in the morning is that what so many people do now, and especially in the time where, we were all stuck at home, is that what's the first thing people do? They grab their phone. They grab their phone first thing in the morning, right? A lot of people use it for their alarm clock and so right away, grab that phone. And then from there, dive into social media or dive into your email or dive into all these things. And so the world is going to give you all the negativity and all the, the things that are going to cause that reticular activating system to say, oh, the world is terrible. Oh, you're going to have a horrible day. Oh, things are just getting worse and worse and worse. And that just primes your brain to just see that all day, just like you said. And so for those, listeners that heard that episode, that I would challenge them to, break that habit. If I can add on a fourth one now, would be to break that habit of diving into, the phone and the social media and the emails and all those, which are just going to bring you down that rabbit hole and will put your brain in a downward spiral, if you will, instead of keeping it, hey, I'm tuned to gratitude. You'd be tuned to everything else that you don't want to be tuned to.
So important. And the way you start your day, people talk about start your day with a good breakfast. I think starting your day with good information and things to be grateful for is far more important than a good breakfast. But if anybody's seen me, I'm not a health expert by any stretch of the imagination, trust me. So with that, did I read correctly that you have another book coming out? Are you working on a second book?
Yes, I've just started that one, and it's when I wrote 12 Hours of Heaven, when I started it, I had, I guess, a longer story in my head, right? And then as it evolved and as I wrote, I was like, okay, this is the complete story. This is where it wraps up. But I always saw that there's more to the story. So it's almost like a sequel, if you will, to 12 Hours of Heaven. It's the working title is Time on Earth, 12 Hours of Heaven, Time on Earth, but it'd be second book in the series there, because as I was in that time, just as I was kind of coming out of that time of having that flood of ideas, I had idea. I mean, I'd always thought of the second one, when I was finishing my writing, so that was a given, but I had ideas for 5 additional books in the series. So I was like, oh man, now I have to write seven total. I have to write 6 more. So I'm just in the early phases of the Time on Earth. I'd like to get it complete this year. I'm working on a ton of stuff with iSpark Change, so that it's I haven't been able to get the writing time like I had last year, right? I had that magical time with the pandemic, but that is on the agenda to get that completed.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'll be looking forward to that, and I hope that I'll get an opportunity to speak with you again around the time that one's coming out, and we can talk a little bit more. And this conversation has been incredible, and I'm sure you and I could talk for hours about all the stuff we have in common and the different things we're trying to do. Tell me, do you have anything coming up with iSpark Change? How can people get involved with iSpark Change? What can people do to get involved with you, Rick, and your organization, iSpark Change?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Wilk, because we have some big things that are coming up in the very near future. So the first one would be anyone can go to just the letter I, iSparkChange.com, and that's where they can join. Right now, we have, if anyone that joins iSpark Change, they get a free download of 25 creative ways to spread positive change. So, I'll give you a little secret. Well, gratitude is one of them, but there's 24 other on there that people can utilize, and they're all simple things that anyone can do to spread positive change. So, if they join, they sign up on the website, they'll get that free download. But what we're rolling out is a big part of iSpark Change, as I've in the past 8 months that I've been developing iSpark Change, a big message that I keep hearing constantly over and over again is working with young people, working with the younger generation. And multiple people that I've spoken with, they're like, hey, you really need to work with younger people. And I kept hearing that inside in my heart, in my head, that I should work with younger folks. And so I started doing more research on it, and I realized that the Gen Z, the like 12 to 25-year-olds, kind of teenagers, young adults, that they've been hit the hardest with mental health issues and stress and anxiety, depression, even suicide as a result of the pandemic. It was already an issue before, but it was amplified with the pandemic. And so next month we're launching a 5-day challenge called Level Up Your Life, specifically for Gen Z. It'll be a 5-day challenge. It'll be a virtual challenge with myself and my co-host who's a psychologist. We'll have 5 days, 5 1-hour sessions with get as many of Gen Z in this group challenge as we can, and then from there we'll have some longer term coaching, if you will, if they want to participate. But we're really excited about rolling out that challenge. I'll have the website and everything for that is all being built. So I'll be able to, put that out here soon. That'll be launched in middle of about a month from now, in the middle of June.
I'm assuming all that information is going to be on your iSparkChange.com website.
Yes, it will all be there. Yeah, we're actually iSpark Change. We're redoing iSpark Change right now, redesigning the website to add some new things in there, to add like Level Up Your Life and add some other stuff that we'll be doing to engage everyone more and make it easier for people to engage with iSpark Change. Because honestly, right now, what we've had to do, Wilk, is we've had to keep a lot of that on Facebook, in the Facebook group, because that's where people go and they can find it. But we're redoing the website so people can engage there. So that there's different resources and tools that they can use there on the website. So that's all coming up in the next few weeks. So those are the big ones that I'm really excited about. In the kind of pre-work we've done with some Gen Z folks, they've all said that it's just so needed. That they really could use it and need it. And so I'm hoping that we get a lot of I'll say kids, but a lot of, because I'm old, but a lot of kids in this challenge, a lot of young adults in this challenge.
I think it is so important. I mean, we've heard, I swear I heard it today on the radio, that up to 51%, as a result of the lockdowns and the pandemic and the reaction to the pandemic or whatever, up to 51% of people in that age bracket now have either attempted or have had suicidal thoughts. And
wow.
I mean, it's, and I don't, obviously not all of them have attempted, but they fall into a category where they've either attempted or they've talked about it or had, serious contemplations of it. So it's so important, the work that you're doing. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, because like I said, I'm all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. And you are doing great things, Rick, to better people's attitude. To better people's attitude, it takes them committing the acts like you talk about. You're giving the acts that people need to take part in to better their lives and better their attitudes. And I just appreciate what you're doing, and I thank you very much. And I know that you and I will talk again, because we have a very, very common mission, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the things and following what you're doing and hearing about all the great things that are coming out of iSpark Change and your books and your book series.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wilk. I mean, it's been a pleasure to be on the show. Like you said, I think we could probably chat for a lot longer, but we'll save those for future episodes. Episode 74 or 82 or 101, where we can chat about more of the other things that are going on.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Rick. We'll catch you again.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Wilk.
Friends, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Rick Ornelas as much as I did. There are just so many ways to do so much good in this world, and Rick is definitely one that you can follow for and learn from, and find different ways to do those good things, those little acts that will make your life a better life. And at the Derate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. That starts with bettering your life. What have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? There's all kinds of little acts that you can learn from this podcast, from Rick and I Spark Change. It's just a matter of you to get out there and do them. So when you're out there, be kind to one another. Be grateful for everything that you've got. And remember, it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. If you haven't yet subscribed to the Derate the Hate podcast, please do so. You can either do it at our site, deratetehate.com. You can do it almost anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can check me out on social media. Most social media platforms will have a Derate the Hate page. So check us out, follow us, share us with your friends. Please subscribe, leave a little feedback. If you've got something to say to me, go ahead and email me, wilk@wilksworld.com. We've got another great interview coming up next week, by the way, with Ben Kaloy from Military Veteran Dad podcast. And that's definitely another one you're not going to want to miss, especially with Memorial Day coming up. So check that out. And again, I'm going to back on out of here.